Welcome to Step Into the Pivot. We're your hosts. I'm Teresa Conti.
And I'm Ivana Polonio. We talk with people just like you. We have honest conversations about current issues that women and men face and how we pivot to address them in our lives.
This podcast is your companion as you step into a workout or take some time for yourself. All right. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Step Into the Pivot. We are so happy to have you here today. With our incredible guest today is Alice Tang. So I'm going to let Ivana go ahead and do a little introduction for us.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Alice. Welcome to Step Into the Pivot. You're no stranger to pivoting. And oh my goodness, have you been an inspiration regarding how to do it? So being here with you in Oregon, I've been really blessed to know you for a very long time. And I watched you transition and teach others how to do that as a businesswoman, an incredibly successful, by all measures, financial advisor, a speaker, a very prominent public figure, and truly a walking, talking inspiration for a lot of women and a lot of young women who are looking for orientation in terms of how to approach life. We look up to you and follow your lead. And the more I got to know you, the more I got inspired by your openness, your courage, your bravery to be imperfect. So with all this, the kudos and the big accolades and the big, like, measurable successes that you have in your repertoire, what I think really makes you stand out is the willingness to say, my grammar is not perfect. That was one of the first things we ever talked about. You'll hear my accent. Let me know if you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm going to cuss right now. Pardon my expression. Or you'll say, and you move through all of these experiences with so much ease and grace. And even when, it's time to talk about something like, I approached you, hey, would you be willing to talk to us about some of these life experiences, the pivots that you've had that have shaped you? You'll raise the bar and you'll say, oh yeah, I will come on the show. But I won't just talk about these life transitions that you've noticed. I'll go for the deepest, starting point. And you do that. You elevate, the conversation, and you elevate the raising of consciousness. So you just go and say, yeah, let's talk about the stuff that, really shaped me. So without further ado, Alice, can you share with us some moments, histories, challenges from your childhood that significantly shaped you? And specifically, what I'm referring to here is experiences with your mother, being brought up by someone that you've described to me as stern. What was that like? How did you navigate it? Tell us about it.
I'm lucky to be born to a lower middle class family in Hong Kong, and we started in a 200 square feet apartment and then moved to a 400 square feet apartment that was single-handed committed by my mother on a 7-year loan mortgage, unheard of, variable. So looking back, it was really hard on her. At the same time, when I answered the question, I took myself back to age 4 or 5. Mom has a certain attitude about life. She's a fighter. She's the shortest woman in the room. However, she is the first professional woman in her village that she was born in Hong Kong. 500 people, no woman before her became a professional who is a right collar who worked in the nursing industry. So that's a little background about my stern mother or tiger mother, tiger mom. So tiger mom always holds a bar. My job is to hit the bar and she raised the bar. I hit the bar, she raised the bar. It's fun to achieve, but I know that the next day the mark is higher. So in my about 18 years in Hong Kong, living with Tiger Mom, I feel like performance is the way to earn love. Now, some of us still do. Americans are performance society too. Who makes the most money? Who has the best grade? Who is the number one baseball hitter? Someone. So we compare and compete. I think it's not about compete, it's really compare. I got to be number one. My kids has to be better than your kids. And what if you gave birth to somebody like me, originally very happy, but not performance-based? I was trained to be a very performance-based kid. My mother handpicked the school that I go to is a very good girls' school that I would not able through application and examination get through, but she has a relationship. So that's how I got into it. But my whole life since grade 1 to my junior high school was miserable because my grades was in the lower third instead of the top third. She was miserable. I was miserable because I wasn't matched in the school that is aligning with my talent, aligning with my efforts, right? So it's a very hard journey. But nonetheless, it's paved the path for me to be an achiever. So I hope this answers your question, Ivana.
Yeah, I really love that because I think we all kind of have those mothers sometimes who really push us, want us to be better, want us to be more, but then aren't happy with where we're at, right? Taking us to the next. So talk about how you feel that that affected your career growth, right? Or why you chose the career you did, or and your work ethic, right? Because I think all those things really do affect, who we are in our career too. So can you talk a little about that?
Yes, Teresa. So I was the youngest female manager in my first job. And why? Because I'm so competitive. I'm trained to be competitive. And I get to a place where I apply my born relationship skills and my work skills. And I got there. So that's really good, getting to a place so I can rise. But then I'm also exhausted. I've never known at the time in my mid-20s why I'm so fatigued, why I was so tired. Tired of what? I got everything. So fame, right? Fame, you're the youngest manager, fame. You can travel on company business Visa card, fame. But that doesn't really create happiness. It doesn't. But it creates finance. And I'm a very good saver. Thank you to Tiger Mom. Imagine she paid off that loan in 7 years. I have the same habit, if not a bigger and better habit. So in my life, I just walk the maze of money. And I know what to spend. I know what to save. So that part, I really, really need to be thankful. Teresa, am I climbing the right branch?
You are for me. I think that's such an important piece, right, of who we are and what we become, and those kind of things. So I think it's really interesting because I talk with my husband a lot about that because he grew up very poor as well, and now he's like, his biggest worry is, are we gonna have enough money, for this and that and the other thing, and this is my husband who was never a saver, right? So it's some of those lessons and some of those things we learn. For you, it was saving. For him, it was that they didn't ever have it, and saving now. So, I really do love that.
Great. So just a little caveat. You didn't ask, but I choose to answer. So where's love in this journey? Where's love? Love to me from a parent is like, moments where you sit down, you have a cup of ice cream, you talk about life and not being judged. That's the relationship that I had with my dad. I can tell my dad almost everything, not because everybody have their own secret, I can tell my dad all my downs, all my desire, and I couldn't tell my mom. So example, graduated with a computer science degree from U of London. I'm supposed to take a computer science job. Who am I now? Who am I? Crazy, right? But before immigrated to United States, the place when I become the youngest manager was the fourth largest jewelry manufacturer in Hong Kong. And they were looking for a admin manager in the export area. Nothing to do with computer. Maybe you can type the keyboard. That's important. But nothing about programming, things like that. I shared that idea with my dad, who didn't graduate from junior high school. And he said, whatever you want to do, do it. Life is too short. And then I know better to convince my dad so that I have 2-to-1 when I go to my mom and said, I'm going to not follow through with my degree and do something else. Her reaction is exactly what I predicted. We spend so much money on you, and you're doing something different. Are you sure? The path in front of you using your computer science education and skill is promised. You will not have a job. The world is blah, blah. But with the support from my dad, I was able to take the job. And that job is not my final today, because nothing to do with export or admin. I learned that I'm really bad in those areas too, but I just didn't want to do computer programming, period. And I wouldn't earn my mom's support without my dad.
So I'm curious if you could, take us inside and looking at these two different approaches that you received, different parenting styles, different parenting expressions. Would you say that there is an absorbed version of your mom, an absorbed version of your dad that you now looking at your own inner landscape carry inside you? Do you feel like there is a mom and a dad voice, essentially, one that can be, stern, one that is, receptive when you bring up doubts? That's yours now. It's with you.
I do think that as I'm making decision, usually it's after the fact, because I'm not smart enough to be in the moment and evaluate, am I using my dad's approach or am I using my mom's approach? I'll think about performance first still, before I think about the overall piece. There's something that I learned in this country. Everybody was telling me when I was in such a situation is it's better to be happy than to be right. I didn't know how to be happy. I know 100% well how to be right.
And what would the synthesis of those two approaches look like? So on an ideal day when Alice is in her flow, which I've seen, and it's a beautiful thing, it's something to be really, marveled at and learned from. What does the synthesis look like? Loving, disciplined. What is that like?
Now that I'm older and older, I'm older than Teresa, I'm older than Ivana, I know that I cannot control my flow during the day. Just me. Many people might be able to do better. My morning virtual and practice actually set the tone about taking a step back, only if I remember. But if I just start running like a train, 90 miles, 290 miles an hour in the morning, most of the time, I kill a few innocents before I stop my train. So the pausing, actually, Dad didn't tell me, but I can see that he said everything is possible. Even when I made the decision to get married, he said, are you sure? I like the man you're dating, I'm totally. But are you sure this is the final? From a very kind way, not a judgmental way, that my boyfriend back then, my husband, is not good for me, but he always asks curious questions. So perhaps it's really the curiosity of, is this true? Is my action the action I'm going to choose to take? Maybe that's that moment of sympathize. And of course, I mean, we all want to win. The three of us are in business, of course, right? If you don't want to win, you just give up. You don't, brush up your proposal. You don't, perform in front of your only one chance presentation.
Yeah.
You gave us a lot to think about. So even and I are very deep in thought because what you've said is very poignant in our lives, right? About you know um, about our identity, and so I'd love for you to touch maybe just for a minute on, you know, has there been a time that your cultural identity has come into play, or have you embraced that as you've gotten older, or has that, the way your mom was, has that helped, hindered, made you think differently sometimes?
Culture is learned habit. So imagine raising a Chinese baby in your household when you guys are Caucasian, beautiful lady. I mean, of course, the child who's being raised think like you and act like you because they watch you. So I can relate to perhaps my mother more than just the Chinese culture, because not necessarily everybody is like that. Um, the toughest time in my life is showing my weak side, and I'm learning. And when Ivana was saying, she watched me transitioning. I like to use a better term, transforming. Yes. So performance is really deeply rooted in me, and perhaps it's a good thing, but everything needs a balance. So
Beautiful, Alice. Yeah. Talk about that balance a little bit more. What do you mean by everything needs a balance?
um, too much of ice cream makes you high cholesterol person, especially the day before you do your body checkup. So I'm just feeling that I'm urged to tell human doing and human being. Human being is what we call each one of us. And why the heck the world doesn't call us human doing? Human doing is you have to do in order to earn recognition, loved, approval, all these things. I'm at a place where I ponder and wonder every time when I make a big decision. Is it performance space? Am I a human being or human doing? Human being, according to my friend Rachel Boom, if you haven't known her, she's beautiful. She once in a conversation, she sent me to a lonely island. She said, Alice, if you go to a lonely island just by yourself, what value do you see yourself have? I struggle with that question. And the next week I meet with her again. And she's like, what's your answer? And I said, I know. I'm resourceful. I'm going to build a raft and paddle back to the bigger island where I can see people and help them and do all my tricks, right? And Rachel said, "You're cheating. That's not the meaning of the exercise." So, well, how about this? Have you ever had a friend who's dying on a bed? What value does this friend have for you and for the world? And I quickly recall my first boss in the company in Hong Kong that I share with. She really died in a very young age. She has deeply touched me. She's the first person who unsolicited advised me. So what value does she have? She's kind, she's loving, she cares, she sees the rough diamond in many of the people she trained, and she's not hesitant to give them what they need at the time when they needed it most. That's the value. So she is a truly human being when she lived, and now that she's not, she's with God. She's at peace, and because of her, when I think of her and seeing her passing is the lesson learned. Human being.
It's so beautiful. Thank you for that exercise. I encourage folks to try it. I'll try it for sure. There's an exercise that I sometimes offer to people, and it's about, you know, think of someone that you really admire, someone that you met, and tell us about their traits and characteristics, just like you just described this, boss from your early beginnings, career-wise, work-wise. And then the person goes into the kind of share that you just did. And then when they're finished, I tend to take notes, and then I tell them, look, you're actually describing yourself. It's something that, others would use those same characteristics to describe you. So, Alice, I encourage you to go back and listen to the podcast and see what some of those characteristics and attributes are that you highlighted about this beautiful woman who represented such a great synthesis of the two principles that you talked about. She would actively speak into what she thought needed to be addressed, and she did that lovingly. Very cool.
Yeah,
So,
her name is Joanna, first name.
Joanna, beautiful.
Yes.
We close out our episodes with the same question we ask everybody, and you picked up on the fact that I talked about transitions earlier. Well, this one is about transformation. So tell us and tell our guests, how were these experiences you've had, the ones especially that we call pivots, meaning the difficult ones that you had to digest. How were those a step forward, meaning a transformation?
You can change people. You can only have peace with them and love them the way they are. And just know that if we can, sometimes we cannot. When we can, just know that they are trying their very best. Even sometimes the actions, the words or the situation make you feel that that's hurting me. That made me really uncomfortable. But just trust that they have tried their best. They have no idea what better is at the time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alice, for sharing all this great stuff. I think you gave everybody a lot to think about. And I love to say, too, sometimes people, when you talked about Joanna, sometimes people come through your life that are there for just a short time, but there is a
Yes.
reason that they are in your life, right? And whatever that looks like. So I really loved that so much. So we are out of time for this week. Thank you, Alice Tang, for being on this week. We really enjoyed having you here. I'm sure we will have you back because I think there's a lot more that we can definitely talk about. So, and thank you to everybody on our podcast for joining us this week. And remember, if you have a pivot, step into it.
Thank you. I'm grateful.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Step Into the Pivot. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation. Remember, life is a series of pivots, and it's in those moments of change that we truly grow.
If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, make sure to check out our websites. You'll find additional resources, behind-the-scenes content, and more details about our incredible guests. We love hearing from listeners, so reach out with your thoughts, questions, or your own pivot stories.
To keep the conversation going, be sure to follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram, where we share updates, quotes, and engage with our amazing community.
If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback makes a difference, and it helps us bring you meaningful conversations. We're signing off, reminding you that every pivot is a step forward. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Step Into the Pivot.